Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of HCTalk. As always, I'm your host, Lance Gormley. We have two special guests on the program, a Miss Diane Moser, who is the CTE Director for the Newton High School, but there's also a combination between that and Hudson Community College, correct?
Correct.
And then Mr. Baughman, who is the CTE Machining Instructor.
Correct.
Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was real excited to have you both out on the program because I'm a huge fan of the CTE program in general at the high school. I myself went through the CTE program as an adult through Hudson Community College, but obviously it's at Brooks Trade Center for welding. So at that time, it was Mr. McConnell who was the instructor. I think he still does a little bit out there, but not necessarily. I think he's retired now, right?
Right.
Correct.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So then one of the other options I had was the CTE machining option, which looking back, I really wish that I would have chosen that profession because welding is hot and you get burned a lot and the whole thing. But both are really good things for youth, young people, you know, middle-aged, career change people, everybody to have a trade, some specialty that really helps them in their career path as far as just going from labor to skilled labor and so forth. So I wanted to have both of you out here, Miss Moser for sure, because I know she can give the 10,000 foot view on it, and then even Mr. Baughman because he can give a little bit more of a closer view of maybe what people that would enter into the machining program could expect, what the reward is for that, and then maybe how that factors into your career. But before we get started on anything, I just want to give you all the opportunity for the audience to get to know you a little bit. Just briefly, where did you come from? Are you lifelong Newtonians? Did you come from somewhere else? How did you find yourself where you are today? And who'd like to go first?
Go ahead.
I can go.
All right.
Yes, I was born and raised in Newton. I'm a Newtonian. Always lived in Newton. Graduated from Newton High School, 1997, class of 1997. After that, I went to work at AGCO Corporation. I was there for about 23 years, working as a machinist. Worked my way up into engineering position for about 4 or 5 years. Then I went into, I decided it was kind of long story short, I always wanted an engineering title. Once I had that, I'm like, well, what do I do now? So then I saw that the machining teaching position opened up at the high school and I put in for it. And that's kind of how I got in the position.
Yeah. So you come from heavily work experience background then,
Correct.
right? So I guess we would say that would be a non-traditional path to being an instructor in your official capacity?
Correct.
Okay, very cool, very cool. And I've always said education without experience is just an education. And many times experience provides you with more than what an education ever could in so many different ways. So it's nice to hear. I didn't know that, but it's nice to hear that you are somebody that was in the work field for many, many years and learned through that, worked your way up, and now you have even that to offer, right? It's not went to college, graduated, became the instructor. It's real world life experience with that, right? Okay, Miss Moser.
All right. Well, so I am not a Newtonian. So I actually grew up in Southeast Kansas, down by south of Kansas City. And graduated from there. Went to Emporia State and then finished my degree in secondary education. I knew in high school I wanted to be a teacher. So I taught social studies for about 16, 17 years at Mays High. And then kind of during the COVID fun, was kind of looking for what am I going to do next, another option, and took the college and career position at Newton and kind of did that. I had taught for WSU Tech for dual credit for a number of years while at Mays, so I kind of had an introduction in CTE and a lot of the Health Science Academy things were coming about at the time, so I was familiar with those. So, and then I worked for 2 years at that, and then the current technical education director position came open, and I had kind of, worked my way through learning the components of pathways and KSE and all the fun of CTE, and was kind of said, can I do this? Can I try this? And so we had a really strong staff. And I definitely wanted to stay in Newton, and the community is strong. I wanted to stay there. So here I am. This is what I'm doing, and I'm still learning. Lots of learning. So, but yeah, that's how I ended up here.
Well, and then how many years? Did you say how many years? And I just wasn't listening.
A 16 at the Mesa High social studies teacher, and this is my 5th year here at Newton High.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, and you mentioned that you're, as far as still learning. I think as far as education is concerned, and I might be wrong, but what I want to assume or believe is that every year you're learning more, and then that's all going to be applied to the following year. Yeah, Mr. Baughman. Okay, so first year teaching, right? When you first said, "Hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to sign up for this," knowing that there's a transition that takes place from being, in a production work environment such as AGCO or another manufacturing environment, and then going into a teaching environment, what did that feel like the first time you did that? The first year?
Horrible.
I remember that year.
That was probably the worst year ever. Partly because, well, one thing, I didn't come from a teaching background. I didn't know what to expect. My wife's a teacher, so I kind of talk with her about certain things. But no, it was bad because it was in the middle of COVID. We were, right in the middle of COVID. That was the other part of it, so there were definitely some challenges there. So yeah, the first year it was quite a large learning curve, learning how to teach, learning the curriculum, pretty much building a lot of my own curriculum during that first year. So yeah, it was I'd say the first year was pretty challenging.
And that came, you said, on COVID, basically. So
right.
you got hired to do the job, and then COVID happened.
It was right in the middle of COVID.
Okay,
actually.
So you
just come back.
Just to come back. So Ms. Moser, just speaking of COVID, because that seems to be something. I mean, when we talk about challenges in anything, COVID, especially in our educational setting, was extremely challenging because you have to adapt the curriculum the best you can to service the needs of the students at the time.
Yes.
But it's almost like derailing everything because all of the things that students are doing in the CET program, you can't do online, right? I mean, very little, if any. So when you came on board, COVID happened. Was that challenging for you as well?
Yes. It's just a social issue too. So after studying social studies, for several years, it's a different piece that people hadn't done for a long time. Was the unknown. And so when we did come back, I remember his first year of teaching, and it really wasn't that bad. I mean, I'm sure you thought it was.
You did it well. You wore it well, Mr. Baughman.
He did it well. But he's right. There's so many pieces in a normal for teaching. Like there's so many decisions that teachers make in a day that it's physically and mentally exhausting, as you know now, right? And it's different than the workforce. And my own husband, love him, but 25 years together, and still he does not get so, and I mean, you're doing the grades, you're keeping up with this, you're doing all the things on top of your minute to minute teaching with the kids, and then you're trying to get them techniques and be good people and all those things. So COVID was interesting because that face to face couldn't happen as much, or if we were face to face, we had to have so many feet between us, and we didn't know, were you going to be at school, or if you were sick, you were gone for several weeks, and how do you get those kids back on track? And we're starting to see the effects of that. You've got younger kids who are having struggling times with reading. Okay, what do we do to help those kids as they come through? We've got kiddos who have social and emotional concerns because of that time too. So we're trying to repair and move forward, and yet do the best that we can. And CTE is just interesting because it's based on technical skill and knowledge, and so it still takes, you have to have knowledge in math and science and reading, all the basics, to then take it to the next level. And a lot of times people say, well, this is trade, this is not college. They are college courses. It is a 2-year. We do have some that transfer even further to a 4-year. But all the kids enjoy it because they see, I'm learning this and now I'm doing it hands-on.
Applicable,
As a student, I mean, I would have even more enjoyed, yes, I want to see how it's done hands-on. So that would, for a lot of kids, when you experience learning, It's your curiosity. It's that natural piece that you want to explore and gain more knowledge and be better at something. It builds their confidence. Yeah. And that's a huge, huge piece. So, but no, you did phenomenal. Like you said, it's a lot of things to take on. I think it was normal to see a lot of this. But yeah, COVID created challenges in many ways, but even more so now, we're trying to, what can we do to pick the kids up where they are, meet them where they are, what are the next steps? It's changing education. I think there's a kind of a big civil change going to be happening here soon of what that looks like. Hopefully more engagement, more hands-on, even sooner than high school.
Yeah. Well, and I got to say, is my personal experience with the CTE program was I excelled, right? When I was going to middle school and high school, oh man, it was almost like you had to force me in the door. I didn't find that a lot of it, and this was ignorant on my behalf as a youth, because the encouragement from people that wanted to see me do well in life always told me, hey, you may not think that this is applicable to you now, but it's gonna be in your life. You're going to want to take the time to learn this, even though maybe it's not you can't find applications for it. And then as a returning adult going to the welding technology program, I excelled. A lot had to do with it was I could learn it, and I could see how the process was supposed to happen, and then there was I did it, and therefore then I had the outcome. So it was more hands-on, kind of not resting on COVID, but speaking of COVID, and then Mr. Baughman mentioned being first year, and Ms. Moser mentioned just kind of the difficulties that we faced. Did all children learn at a different pace, right? And I didn't say all children,
100%.
but all students excel in some areas, maybe some they don't, but they all learn differently, and they all learn at a different pace. Did you find that there were students that were excelling, and then all of a sudden COVID happened and they had a real difficult time with being able to be successful, or just struggled in that way, where we talk socially or we talk academically, however it might be? And then there was other students that maybe you didn't think, like they're really going to struggle, and yet they did better in a way in that situation. Mr. Baughman, you want to go first on that?
I had to think about that. Well, I mean, I didn't really have any experience prior to that to know, learning ways different students learn, but I did notice, since my class was one of the classes where they had to be in physically, that was the only time that a lot of students could socialize, together. And so it kind of seemed like they took it a little bit more seriously, in my class, and, took it upon themselves to do the work and everything like that. Typically, as far as different learning techniques, I usually show them, I show them how to do it. I tell them how to do it. I do it myself, and then we do it. Kind of the I do, we do, you do type scenario. So I do that quite a bit in the class, and they kind of pick up on that, and that seems to work out pretty good.
Yeah. And then Miss Moser, in your long career of being, I mean that's really what I mean. Many
Are you
years.
calling me old?
No. I heard the number 12 in there somewhere about
there's
that,
some
and
big
then
numbers,
CTE, but you have quite an extensive background. I mean, a resume, if you would call it. Is not only were you in-person social studies teacher, so you got that aspect of it, but then you mentioned technical education. So there was that transition of seeing how this operates both at a college level and at a high school level, and how might you mesh the two, and then going through something that's completely changed our educational system and highlighted many areas maybe that we could be more successful at, or a way to change things in order to meet the students' needs based upon circumstances we had no control over. Have just kind of give me an understanding about and I say you're an administrator, right? So a 10,000-foot view of how to navigate through the CTE process with both college and high school students.
Yeah, great question. And that's where I think that I have the most interest. Obviously, I'm in education because I want to see the the benefit for students. So, obviously we all think high school graduation, what they're doing after, but just to see the things that he kind of mentions is they gain that confidence. Well, then they're willing to ask questions. I mean, those are big hurdles for a lot of kids to come out of their shell and to do, and that's how they learn, because then they'll like, oh, I don't need someone to prompt me. I can do this myself. And it's a big thing with problem solving. And then the years of education, you sometimes see, well, we have so much technology and we tend to do things for them. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to struggle. That's where, as adults, we know that. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to make mistakes. We want them to do those in a safe environment now. And then as an adult, they know, okay, I know what resource I need to go to. So I could go on all day about this, but there's a lot of different pieces that kind of bring it together. But there's a lot of hurdles in education. Sometimes we create our own barriers. We create processes that maybe are not so much focused 100% on students. We're talking individual students or students in general. Where do we want them to be? And so when we look at grading, or we look at what we call standards or competencies, and how are we assessing those, and how do students feel, like giving them feedback. I could say, well, a student is doing this assignment and they turn it in. That's not the process. The process is, what is your goal for the student to know? Does the student know that goal? How do they work towards that goal? What do they do when they meet that goal? Or what if they do if they can't? Or they don't. And so there's that relearning, there's that feedback. It's constant back and forth, and it's a little bit more than the average person knows. It's a little more in depth, whether it's a hands-on skill, but like you mentioned, some of it comes down to knowing the basics first before you can go do that piece. And then he mentioned again, experience. You've got to, and we know this in the work world, you've got to keep asking questions. So there's no way everybody knows everything. You have to have your resources. You have to take feedback. You have to be able to ask questions and keep seeking that. So to merge college or post-secondary with high school is interesting, because again, it sometimes is an adult issue, in that colleges think that this is their piece, and then high schools, well, we're staying over in our lane. We have to create that bridge. And after teaching dual credit, I kind of saw some good and bad of that. Colleges obviously want, the specific students. And it's like, well, every student should get that opportunity of rigor, every student. So because they're not going to face up to the challenge unless it's posed to them. So you don't know what you'll be until that situation happens. And we can't all be prepared for everything that's going to happen all the time. But how do you problem solve or cope through that? And so that's trying to bridge that piece. We want the students to have kind of a path of, okay, this is what my skill is, or this is where my weaknesses are. Where am I headed? And they don't have to have it figured out, because I think that's what sometimes kids get really worried during your senior year. What am I going to do? Who am I going to be? And I always say, I just need you to be a good person.
Yeah. I
really do. I just need you to be a good person. I tell my own child, you can do 10 different things. You can have 10 different degrees. You just need to be a good person. And that will come out in whatever it is you're doing. And I hope, kids do multiple things. To be honest with you, I'm rare. I've been in the same world for many years. It's going to be common for our students to go to jobs that don't exist today. And that's okay. And for them to be able to work through the hard, but again, be good people, give back to the community, have their values, and then pursue what their workforce or their job and the community will look like. So bridging that gap is what's beneficial to the students, what's beneficial to the community, education-wise, trying to keep the paths or the lines of communication open. So sometimes, like I said, adults kind of create processes and barriers that, don't make that happen so much. So we try to keep those lines open and listen to the students a little bit. They have a lot to say. And again, they have a perspective. When you're looking at the big picture, which I learned, it took me a while, but I understood it after maybe doing my master's and some other things, that, okay, what about the big picture? So this is how this day-to-day affects me and my schedule or the student's schedule. Now when you look at the big picture, it's like, okay, from pre-K to 12th or post-secondary, there's a lot of pieces there. And so I think sometimes we have our blinders on like a horse, and we get in that mode, and it's like, step back and look. Who all is affected? What are all the pieces? What's the real information? So instead of kind of, just looking at one piece of it. So, and sometimes that's something to teach kids too, is they assume, oh, this is why this is no, that's really not why it is.
Yeah, and it's hard for, and I'll say this difference between myself as an adult, right, and then how I look back and saw myself as a youth. It's very difficult to see long-term effects and consequences of what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And no excuses for that. I think all youth are that way. That's why we have parents and and mentors and teachers and stuff. But something when you were talking, and it might sound strange or cliche, I don't want to sound ignorant here, but it's almost as though if I could say that your passion is to help teach people how to learn.
Yeah.
So it's like learning how to learn, right?
Yes.
So I've said it before on another program. I just remember this is something that I understand to be is, I give the analogy of I can hand my kid a broom and I can say, sweep the floor. And then when I'm watching them sweep the floor, I'm like, that's not how you sweep the floor. But we take for granted these things maybe that we were taught, right? And we just assume that it's inherent in them to know how to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And as an educator, what you're talking about from an administrative perspective is well, I'm focusing in on how do we effectively teach these kids a proper way to learn something.
Correct.
And then the next question I have is, we often think of a CTE program as you have this type of curriculum to teach you how to either weld and we'll get into some of the options that the CTE program offers. In my case, we talked about welding and Mr. Baughman is a machining instructor, but is there a portion of the program that also focuses not only on the curriculum and how to do the job, but also how to, let's say, make sure that you show up on time to class every day? These are the type of things an employer is looking for. These are the type of attitude. Is there some emphasis placed on this transition from education, CTE, into the workforce?
For sure. So we do it in multiple ways, and the teachers do it individually too within their classes. It's naturally embedded, but as a school we even do it. But we look at things like your attendance, but we do a lot of one-on-one mentoring. So within the school, you have students who are in seminars. So Mr. Baughman has his crew with him, his own machining students, and that he mentors them. And so he, helps them with their resumes. But as freshmen and sophomores, before they get to him, they're doing all kinds of career exploration. And they're getting a little dab of that in middle school and getting a little dab of that in elementary when they do career days and things like that. So we're trying to expand more of that. But then once the students get to us, we are talking about, okay, so you're going to go to a job shadow for half a day. This is how you dress. This is how you're going to talk or communicate. These are some questions to ask to kind of get them, because we all assume that by the time I was 14, I was working. Okay. That's not the case for a lot of our students. It might be 16, 17, 18 before they have their first job. So we kind of have to coach them on, these are the questions you're asked. This is how you fill out an application. I sat with a student the other day to fill out a job application. We had senior mock interviews a couple weeks ago, and this might be the first time that a lot of our seniors had a serious interview. So if they're working in retail or fast food, it might be a real quick question, show up in your casual clothes. This was to prep them for. And it's we said earlier, it takes experience. And so we're doing these little things along the way to expose them to prepare them. And you're right, it's things that we just assume we know, but we don't. It's the communication piece, how to write or speak formally, the types of questions to ask, your body language, all that. So we embed them as a school into our career pieces that we do for their individual plan of study, which should be focused on them. But even more so in our upper level CTE and our application courses, that's required. So work-based learning would be an example. If we have a student going into an apprenticeship or an internship, we prep them with those things. So we've got 40-some students that are at a business somewhere in the area for 2 to 3 hours a day, but they have to be interviewed. They have to have their resume. They have a whole portfolio that they have to have ahead of time. And even in the internships, my college and career advocate, Ms. Jarrell, will tell you that there's still things that come up, and they're like, okay, how do I deal with this? And they have once-a-month meetings, and they have those conversations. So it's kind of like being at a workplace course. Mr. Baughman was brave and took on work ethics this year for our machining students so they could earn their Cert B. That's one little piece that's missing, but in a way we say it's common sense because it's things we already have embedded in the course itself. So definitely by the time that they're seniors, they've been exposed. So, but again, the real world experience will add more to that, and there are more layers. So, but yeah, we embed it throughout our different classes, and as the students get older, they get more exposure to that. So, and job shadows is something that's, believe it or not, kind of unique to Newton High School. Not too many students in the state of Kansas, they're getting better about doing those things, but that's really not been an opportunity. Along with internships, there's other states that do a much better job of that, and Kansas is kind of far behind with that. But Newton, one of the reasons I'm here is because of that work-based learning piece.
Yeah. Okay. So, Mr. Baughman, maybe this gears towards kind of the question that I asked Ms. Moser. The day-to-day, but work ethics kind of just, to me, hits the nail on the head, right? So you teach work ethics, which is a college course that goes runs parallel with the curriculum that you are teaching the students in order to make sure that they're work ready, right, with their skills. So what is a basic, what does work ethics teach? I mean, it sounds self-explanatory, but I'm assuming it's not.
Right. So I just had my advisory meeting here a while back, and we got in a good conversation about what's in work ethics, because it is a required class to get a certificate. So a lot of the things in work ethics, and before I taught it, I didn't really know what was embedded in the class. I would say that, thinking about it and seeing it firsthand, there are a lot of good scenarios in there which kind of force the students to think about it. Just simple things like, I think one of the assignments was, okay, you have a shopping cart, you take it out to your car, unload your groceries. Do you take it back to the building or just leave it out, the parking lot? Just simple things like that. And it kind of makes them think, what would be the right thing to do. And then it kind of transitions into, real job type scenarios, what's the right thing to do. So yeah, I'd say it's a really useful class for us, as adults. We've been through those scenarios, and it doesn't really force us to think about it because we've already experienced that. For them, however, they're still in high school. They haven't had a chance to really think about that. So I think that's a pretty useful class to do.
Yeah. Well, and we all know that there's probably, if you go to a Walmart parking lot or a Dillon's parking lot or anything of the sort, not everybody chooses to take the cart back and put it where it goes, type of thing. So it's once again going back to that preparation of youth students to think through these processes, right? And then if that becomes applicable in one scenario, hopefully that's transferable over to other ones, right? If you're willing to take the cart back, then you're also willing to do what you should do at your job, let's say, rather than what they ask you to do, right? So it's kind of like thinking, how do I navigate this process of my work environment in an ethical way, right? I mean, is that close to kind of what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Send it back over to Ms. Moser for the 10,000 foot view. Okay. And then I want to come back to Mr. Baughman for just the micro view that has to do with machining. What for people that are listening right now and they're like, CTE, what? And we should know, because us in our community, I'm a huge fan. I know why I'm a huge fan. It's a gym that our school provides. It's even better that you get college credit for it in the whole thing. I mean, my son's in the program with Mr. Baughman, and he loves it, Mr. Baughman. I just got to tell you, absolutely loves it. Best class he ever had in all.
He tells me that every day.
I love your class, Mr. Baughman. And knowing my son, he would not tell you that if it wasn't true. So he's there to sing praises of just the whole thing. But for people that don't know what a CTE program is or what is offered, can you just give the audience a little bit more of detail about what is the CTE program, maybe what CTE programs are offered, how that relates to them, how looking at it from a parent perspective, or just somebody that's thinking about returning to school to further their education from being a laborer to a skilled laborer, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, great questions. Yeah, so a lot of times we still hear, what is CTE? I remember when I started 5 years ago, I still had kids asking me that. So it stands for Career and Technical Education. We tend to have a lot of acronyms in education. We like those. But some might know it previously as VOTEC. Too. So that's interchanging, and that's one of the changes kind of coming down the pike too, is that we're trying to provide as educators opportunities for students to kind of hone in or explore different career fields. And obviously they all look different. So we got anything from health science, where you would have students who can be in classes like CNA, CMA, on the path to getting certificates. We've got a lot of students that do that program, and then they're working at our local nursing homes. I don't think I've been to a nursing home where I haven't seen one of our students.
Or in MC Health, I've
There
heard
you
about
go.
that.
And
yeah.
MC Health, yes, exactly. So they take a lot of our students as well as interns and work there. But yeah, we've got 16 different, the state refers to them as pathways. They're kind of like program goals, a big piece of like certificates or credentials. So they kind of walk out with saying, hey, I have this technical skill and now I can go and work in this particular field. And it's probably entry level many times, but that's a start for them. And I kind of go back to my own husband. He went to the Air Force right after high school and got done, and thought he wanted to go back to college. Wasn't really into it a whole lot right at the time. So he became an apprentice for an electrician. And so he, did that for 4 or 5 years while learning to become a computer programmer, which was his dream job. But he had very little debt at the end. So he had that skill, and he can also wire everything in our house now. So, which
Right,
is,
right.
we all know,
Another
super
skill.
expensive.
Yes,
super
yes.
expensive. So we talk about life skills. That's a big piece of what CTE is. It's life skills. It's career exploration. It's that bridge I was talking about, sending kids out with, I have the confidence, I have this skill that will get me started. I may not go that route entirely. I may go off to something else, but it's a start and it builds their confidence. So it also creates that bridge of kind of, we're in this weird funk of, what do I do as a job, or what do I do as a career, and what are these things called, health services I got to pay, and taxes are coming out, and what all those things mean, and being part of a community again. So we've got about 17 programs, and 16 of those are recognized as what pathways. A new program we started was our electrical one with HCC this year, which I was super excited. You can kind of see from my previous story why electrical was kind of a piece, but it's high demand. So a lot of our pathways are high demand jobs. So we've got industry that say, hey, we're hurting for employees. I mean, every day I'm getting a phone call, we're hurting for employees. We want to come talk to your students. And I kind of school them first. I'm like, okay, you're talking to high school kids. I've done this for a few years. This is how they're going to see things. I said, you can't just come in and tell them about your business. You've got to come in and kind of be their mentor. You got to come in many times. And you got to come in like some of our partners are, like Doug Scheibel and Tim Swigert. And they come in weekly or bi-weekly, or Chris Wandra is another one too. They come in and they talk with the kids, or they tell them about their life story, and the kids want to know them as a human.
Yeah.
They want to know, like, what was the worst time in your life? They'll ask you those questions. What was the worst time in your life, right?
I'm getting ready to ask you guys that question.
What is the worst time in your life? But I mean, we talked about learning and experiences, and that's when they realize it's okay to be at rock bottom. It's okay to not know. And I think it's those things that go through their mind of what they can do and cannot. So, and I was talking to one of our kids today. He went through our first year of electrical program, and he won't continue on that way, but it got him a networking connection with another location. So he's actually being mentored right now to go into marketing and advertising for them. And I mean, it's just that networking, that communication, and feeling it out type of thing. So a lot of our programs, from agriculture, we've got an auto. There aren't too many high schools that have these facilities and instructors on site.
Yeah.
A lot of times, if you go to Wichita schools, they're using WSU Tech or others because they don't have those instructors. We are unique in that we have instructors. They're strong instructors, but they're also like Mr. Baughman. About half of them went to Newton High School or live in the community and attended, and they've been in industry. So half of them are that industry piece, which brings great value to us. So, and then the other half are educators, kind of like myself, who have done it for a number of years and have a strength or have done a history of teaching various classes and have that expertise in that particular area, so can provide that as well. So, and it takes that team effort. There's a lot of them that work together on those things. There's a lot of things that are in our community that have been produced by our students and our instructors. So, all of our Newton High School, teachers should be supported in every way. I could go on and on. supporting teachers all day long, but just the emphasis of getting in your buildings and seeing what do teachers do day to day. What do our students do? Like following a student around all day. Like what are the classes? What is the schedule? What does their lunch look like? What are they doing? We have to have the facilities and the instructors to create that problem solving we want our kids to have as students and adults. So.
And I've said, investing in teachers, investing in our education, investing in infrastructure, these are all three key areas that communities really need to focus on. Now, this is just what I'm saying here. And then not only that, but the economic development impact that's made in a local community can transfer over to what you're talking about. I mean, for companies that are having a difficult time finding employees or people to fill the skill, the needed trade that they have to operate, well, if you're in a relationship with Newton and you're in a relationship with Hutch Community College, and not taking away from Wichita Tech or anything, but it's very important that we train up our youth, train up our students, give them the education necessary to fill a much needed spot in the overall scheme of things, and hopefully keep them here. So throwing it over to Mr. Baughman, what does a typical day in the life of a student that is part of the CTE machining program look like?
So a typical day, it kind of changes throughout the year. The first part of the year, normally we're in the classroom, learning, bookwork type stuff, and then we kind of venture out to the shop. Towards the end of the year, though, most of the time is spent out in the shop. So going back to what you guys were talking about earlier, about questions about life experiences, I get those questions on a daily basis, and I try to relate, tell them little pieces of my own life, to kind of relate. They sometimes they ask me to repeat stories that I've told them in the past that are kind of funny, and sometimes I change it up a little bit. But yeah, typical day for a student, they come in usually by the second semester, towards the end of the year. They're going out in the shop, they're doing their own thing. They've kind of found their skill by that point. They know kind of what they're doing out in the shop, and they're doing a lot of complex things, especially in my machining 2 students. By the second semester, machining 2, they're programming their own parts, they're setting up their own machines. Some of the students that have excelled and completed all the projects, like your son, are now moving on to their own projects, and now they're
he's practically teaching the class.
Yeah, pretty
Is
much.
that what he's doing right now that you're here with me? Yeah, right.
So,
I wouldn't do that. No, I love my son's awesome.
He's done great. He kind of takes up the slack when I'm helping other people. He'll go out and help other students. But yeah, machining 1, they're kind of the first year type students. They're running a lot of the conventional machines, manually operated machines. They're getting their projects done by the end of the semester. So typically, I like them to go out and work. A lot of my work ethic is, don't go back in the classroom and just sit. You need to go out and do, keep working till the end of the day. And so it's typically most students, stay on task, and they like to be there. They want to be out in the machine shop, running machines, making things. Yeah. So
I think a lot don't realize, like, there's 2.5 really. Auto, machine, and weld are pretty strong programs that we also have adults in those too, but we run it. HCC requires minutes. Yeah. So where if you're taking like English or something, it's dual credit, you're in the classroom, but this is a combination of the two. Like you're in multiple classes at one time, if that makes sense. So there's 3 or 4 classes that he's teaching at one time. So he's got them for 3 or 4 hours. He's got to mix it up. So yeah, you're doing some time here in the classroom on this math, and then now we're going to go work on your hammer and we're going to learn to go program. But he's got kids all over the place doing different pacing. The same thing as with welding, and the same piece with auto as well. So I think that's just unique to teaching, where, in a classroom setting, typically you're kind of everybody's going the same, or you've got them in small groups. But in this case, the pacing is multiple classes at one time for a great deal of time.
Yeah.
Have you found, and I'm going to ask Mr. Baughman this and then kick it back over to Ms. Moser, but Mr. Baughman, have you found that the majority, you've been doing this for a few years now, the majority of your students, from the time that they come in the door, probably have little to no understanding of CNC machining, whether, I mean, that's like we talked about my son. It's he comes in, he comes in and tells me, hey, I did this and this on this type of machine, and I'm like, I'm a welder. How about we talk about a molten pool and whether we're doing tungsten with
uphill welding down.
Yeah. And he's like, so it's like to me, even having a basic knowledge and understanding of a trade does not mean that I have. I mean, you're speaking Spanish to me, right? And I don't know Spanish. So, do you find that from the beginning of when the students come in that they have little knowledge? But then by the end of the process, whether that be a 2-year process for high schoolers or a 1-year process, full-time student for a college student, whatever the case may be, that they are coming out of your program equipped with the knowledge and the confidence and the capability to go into the workforce and fill a role almost in a way in which they wouldn't have if they hadn't worked through the process that's there with the curriculum and what you're trying to instill in them?
Yeah, so I try to equip them with more than enough skills than they'll need out in the workforce. We go through manual machining, CNC machining. A lot of students, when they graduate and go into the workforce, they'll probably use 1 or 2 of those skills. I try to teach them the whole gambit. I like to say I make machinists out of the program, not just machine operators.
Okay.
So when students graduate the program, a lot of my students are there for 3 years. So, by the end of that 3 years, even though it's a 2-year program, they're more than skilled in what they need, out in the workforce. So when they graduate, typically my seniors, I try to get them to do, numerous job shadows. Try to get out there. I try to push them. There's a lot of our industry leaders that have openings in the town that they can come in and work part-time as machinists. So by the time they graduate high school, they should have a certificate B and experience. I tell them that, almost daily, experience and education.
Yeah, that's the key. That's the key. And, when we talk about, let's say the I'll call it the big 4, not taking away from any other CTE program that's there, but when you talk about welders, machinists, electricians, automotive industry, I mean, I think I was reading the other day, there's an automotive 4-year degree that's just down the road, right? So if they're taking college courses, getting college credit, then that's also transferable over to a secondary or going on to college, doing something different. If you want to go into business, then it doesn't matter. You still have a background in machining, and from there, then when it comes to the workforce, if you have a working knowledge of something, that makes you more applicable. But with these 4, what I was wanting to say is they're always looking for people. Like with this skill, if you're somebody that's an adult and you have a basic understanding of how to show up to work on time and how to do a good job and how to have work ethic or whatever, and you're looking for some way to improve your skills to be more applicable, to make more money, to have more job security, this is kind of the path. I mean, not kind of, it's a path to look at, to come to, right? So, Ms. Moser, do you find that in your experience with looking at it from all perspectives with all of these different programs, that people that come in do wind up leaving with a better understanding in education to make them more applicable in the workforce and then turn around to be successful in that way?
Yes, 100%. So, and I think that's the benefit of CTE versus, okay, I'm just going to do, my core classes. They get a little dabble. So like things that we're doing here today with all this technology, we got a whole design, media, and communications department. I've got a business department. I've got all these. So a lot of our students will dabble and explore like they should in multiple programs. And like you mentioned, so let's say I have a background as an electrician or an automotive or in agriculture. Maybe I'm going to do my own business. As you said, us as adults, we know that we have to learn more or seek further education. That should be the common piece. It's not yes, they're going to trade and yes, they're going to college. Like I said, we're trying to bridge that. Learning is learning. Yeah. And everybody's going to go their path differently. I mean, that was a big thing when I started, is we called it the road to success. Everybody's got that windy road of he talked about his pathway, and I've talked about mine, and you have yours, and everybody will tell you that some of the life lessons were through poor choices or mistakes, or just pieces like that. So, and I think that's like going back to teaching students, like making choices and being okay with that, and going, okay, maybe that wasn't what I wanted it to be. I'm going to try something else. So, but yeah, those are all things, like you said, for employers are calling and they want people who are willing to show up to work and do the job. And then sometimes they ask us, well, how do we get kids to want to walk out of high school and work? And I said, it is a little bit different. You have to be socially aware. So for various reasons, technology and other reasons, students are much stronger at knowing information because they have access to it sooner.
Yeah.
So they're knowledgeable, but like you mentioned, you could say sweep up the floor, and yet you might have to teach that because we consider that maybe a basic skill. We might have to teach that, but there's other things that, man, they can turn around and show me, like all this equipment. I got some kids, I'm thinking, man, they would come in here and show me how to use this, and I would have no idea. Or my son with IT. I got an IT problem, he's my go-to, right? Yeah. Now to ask him to, cook me dinner, that's my fault. I need to work on that. Right, there you go. And I'm like, no, real food. So I think, that's that piece there. So we're just, doing basic skills of human skills. Sometimes you call them life skills, but then on the piece of what does that look like in the workforce, but then also what is your skill? And what is that? Where does that take you? Where do you want to be? Yeah, and what's your path to get there? So planning.
And just getting them to think about that. It's often said that it takes a village.
Amen.
And what I'm seeing here is yes, not only am I trying to impart into my youth. Mr. Baughman brought up my son Tristan. That's in the program and is doing well there. Well, there's other areas that wish she could kind of do better, but there's this learning to learn process. Once again, we go back to it, and I can impart knowledge and wisdom and information into my son. Then he goes to school, has great educators that are there to impart that piece, and then like Mr. Baughman. Heck, Mr. Baughman, he probably heard me say something 1,000 times, didn't listen, and he heard you say something. He's like, yeah, that's right, Mr. Baughman. Guess what I learned at school today? Oh, yeah, okay. So no, but yeah, that's great. So for just the director aspect of it, and just trying to get people to understand. So if you are a Newton High School student, then you do not pay.
Correct. So a big piece of high school, and this is the State Department of Education kind of pushing some of this, they have some courses that are called Excel and CTE. Those are funded, and the tuition is basically covered because you're in high school. So there is a benefit for students to start that while in high school. We do have partnerships that, let's say you start as a senior and then you go out as an adult. There are scholarships and things that the trade schools and the colleges will do to continue with that. We're doing a much better job in Kansas with those pieces. But yeah, and then there are some other programs that there's just no tuition. It's just part of the learning piece. That's much different than 1996 when I was in school. In 1996, our new best elective was psychology. So, which I took part in, but again, the hands-on piece and the opportunities there, all the student organizations that go with that. So like your FFA, your Skills USA, all those pieces, your BPA, those are in addition to. So like I said, our teachers aren't just classroom mode. They're teaching people how to be good learners and strong learners and problem solvers, and then taking them out for leadership competitions, taking them out for competitions on technical things too. So they're getting a lot of training and a lot of knowledge and a lot of exposure that maybe they wouldn't in some other areas. But it is a big push for Kansas to open that up, depending upon the student which way they want to go.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Baughman. So in your particular CTE program, machining, how many college credits does a student earn through the entirety of the program?
So there's two different certifications. There's Certification A, which is the lesser college credit. There's Certificate B, which is 31 credit hours of college credit, and that includes the work ethics class. So yeah, 31 credit hours. I explain that over and over to students in the class. Some of them, when they first start in the class, they're not aware that they're actually getting college credit. I have to explain that to them. You have to do X, Y, Z in this class because it not only applies to your high school grade, but it also applies to your college grade as well. And, you're getting free college credit.
Yeah, free college. I mean, and it's, of course, it takes a village, right? So then our school system needs to invest in that, invest in the infrastructure, and invest and make those programs better to afford the students the ability to have a good environment where they're able to maximize their education. So kind of a general question, and Ms. Moser I'll ask Mr. Baughman first. What is one of the best things that you can pick out of doing what you do? Why not so much why do what you do, but what is one of the best things that you feel is the most rewarding to you specifically about doing your day-to-day and being a CTE machining instructor?
I like the students. I'd say probably, at night when I wake up in the morning, that's probably the first thing I think about is my students. Did I engage with them enough? Am I teaching them what they need to know? Did I touch base with everybody on, whatever? So, yeah, the big part is my students. I want to make them as successful as they can be. I want them to know, the skills that they need to be out in the workforce. So, yeah, I mean, besides teaching, them skills and the curriculum and making sure they do what they need to do day in and day out, it's, are they going to be successful when they graduate? Do they know what they need to know by the time they leave my class?
And mentorship, you
Right.
mentioned mentorship too. Ms. Moser, what is the best part or the most beneficial thing you feel you have to contribute to
what I do, whatever it
to
is
being
I do.
the director? I mean, that's a big deal, right? Like I say the 10,000-foot view, but Mr. Baughman is specific to the machining, right? And then you have different instructors that are specific to what they're trying to teach their students, and then you're kind of over here going, okay, well, I need to make sure that this is all balanced out. I need to make sure that everybody's firing on all cylinders. But so I guess I want to ask you, what's the most rewarding thing about what you do?
That's a great question. Man, there's so much. So this is where I get all worked up. I have loved my job ever since I've been in education, but the fact that I'm in year 20-some and I can still love my job, I think is what's interesting. It goes back to what Mr. Baughman mentioned first. It comes down to the kids. They become part of your family. They're an extended part, so they come in as green as can be, and we kind of form them, and then we're excited to kind of see them do exciting things and to really grow. You really see them physically grow, but also mentally grow as well. But giving them opportunities that maybe we didn't have or that they wouldn't have because of just barriers that exist for them, just to see them gain that confidence and go and be an adult and come back. I mean, I don't know how many times I run into them as adults, and that's my favorite part of like, oh my gosh, what are you doing and all that. Or they see you in the store and yell Baughman or Moser, like, where am I hearing my name? So
3 aisles over.
yeah, I know. So I mean, the honoriest of kids, those are my favorite, believe it or not, at the moment, but when they kind of grow up and do their thing, have their own family and things like that. So, and that's what it's all about is people in the community and that having those values. So, but no, I enjoy what I do. I mean, it's great to have a group of teachers who have a passion for what they do, and want to make that better all the time. I mean, I think our theme this year was like dare to be great, and as our CTE and as our building. And I think we've done a great job, like holding each other accountable and challenging each other and creating that rigor that we want for our kids, because the kids see that.
Yeah.
We have to think that every day, because I think every day I wake up, it's kind of like being the oldest sibling. I hated it. Okay, I'm oldest of 7. I hated it because everywhere I went, I created the mold for my younger siblings, which they didn't do a very good job. But
well, the first is always
but I had that mold, and I tell the kids wherever you go, they see you as a Newton High School student. If you're going to Spirit, they see you as Newton. Like, always remember that. That's the trademark that you're leaving, and someone's going to say good things about you or not so good things. Which do you want it to be? So, and I think, like I said, it's just going back to teaching them to be human, but all the access and resources that we have as adults to give these kids to be successful and to enjoy life, to demonstrate that, to model that for them, to see that there are good things out there and they can be good people. But yeah, the passion of all these options now that have kind of opened up doors for students and helping them network and learn things when they're 16, 17 years old, not have to wait until you're 25, 26, like some of us did, is quite the opportunity. And all the information they have access to, like they can read it like that. And it's like, okay, so what do you know? Well, let's go experience it. So life moves fast. So sometimes you got to slow down and take it in. Okay, I'm waking up today, going to work today. I'm going to see those kids today. Yes, there's going to be the ornery ones. Yes, there's going to be the ones that are a challenge. But overall, you know, do they respond in an engaging way that were you the highlight of their day?
Yeah.
I don't know how many times that sadly that's been the piece of when they leave. They say, you were hard, you challenged me, but I respect that, and you made me a better person.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's your job.
That's my job.
You know. Okay, so Mr. Baughman, biggest challenge.
Biggest challenge, teaching math. No, I don't know. Challenge.
We're all like, are you talking about see that?
So are you saying that it's hard for you to teach math, or it's hard to make sure that the
Math.
people receiving the math that's supposed to do are successful in that?
It's kind of funny because, I mean, machining, you really have to know your math. I was never really good at math, you know, and math is a huge piece in machining, you know, whether it's decimal places, adding, subtracting, division. But it's just, I'd say that's probably the most challenging part is doing the book work for me. You know, I'd rather be out in the shop, you know, with the students making parts, running machines, telling them how to do something, you know. It's probably I'd say that's the most challenging part is doing book work because I can't stand book work.
Yeah.
I'd rather be out in the shop with the students.
Yeah. Hands-on. You're hands-on.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, Ms. Moser, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges facing the CTE program?
I think it's just the biggest challenge of education in general is just legislatures understanding what a day-to-day education looks like for kids and what's best for kids, and getting our perspective, getting teachers' perspectives on what that would be, getting parents' perspectives on what the need is and how to support that. So advocating for students, which I enjoy the most, but also is the hardest part of the job. So yeah, I hate the reports too. I don't like to do but they're part of it. Also know that without that, you know, the kids wouldn't have the services that they need or the resources that they need. But yeah, like I said, the challenges are sometimes barriers that adults put up that just don't need to be there. So trying to provide opportunities for kiddos and ways for them to be successful and be confident and, again, be good humans. You put barriers in the way of that, and then, like, what's the point? So
Yeah, and it's disenfranchisement. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of that in our society today. I'll say that, not to go too deep. If right now, if I was someone that were either in a parent situation or a student situation, or you know, as a returning adult, or just a high school student, asking myself, should I pursue this CTE program? And then even more specifically, Mr. Baughman, you know, should I pursue the CTE machining program? What would be your answer to that?
I would say yes. So one of my adult students that started the program last year, he came into the program, didn't know anything about machining. He wanted a better job, better options. And he thought machining would give him those options. And turns out he's been pretty successful in the machining program. He's working as a machinist. He says he loves it. So yeah, I mean, if you're an adult looking for a change, you know, in career, definitely machining. If you get into the manufacturing world, you're always going to have a job as a machinist, you know, not just making parts as a machinist, but there's several other options in the manufacturing world when you're a machinist, you know, to get into. So that kind of opens more doors in and of itself going through the course.
So open doors of opportunity. Ms. Moser, if I'm a parent or a student or a returning adult, and I'm questioning whether the CTE program would be right for me or beneficial for me, what do you got?
yeah, you know, exactly what you said. So it opens doors, it opens opportunities, and it builds confidence. So I think it makes what they're learning in the classrooms more applicable. So if they're in English and they're like, gosh, I hate reading these books or I hate writing these papers, and then they're going to digital media and design and want to be part of writing or advertising. I mean, all those little words you're learning, the vocabulary, the techniques, all the stuff that I probably have forgotten. is being used in that particular task. The same thing if I'm going into a cooking class and I've got to know my measurements, I've got to know that math, and I want to have something eventually besides mac and cheese every day. Mm-hmm. So definitely as an adult anyway. So I think the thing, like I said, that would have been beneficial to a lot of students, or should be beneficial, is the basic core that you're learning. How can I apply that in the multiple areas? When can I use that? And so that's the benefit of all CTE programs. The other benefit is that, again, there's credentialing, there's networking. You get, this the amount of businesses that you can see that exists. We like to send kids to small businesses and then large businesses and say, what do you think would be your fit and why? Yeah. And like you mentioned, there's so many, you talked about manufacturing, there's so many job titles, and there'll be so many different more. There might be robots existing. Well, someone's got to program the robot, somebody's got to fix the robot, somebody's got to still put the pieces together. So I think there's a lot of jobs and careers that exist still, or will, that are the unknown, and just knowing how to work and be curious and want to learn. That's the benefit of these students, is to get that experience and that network, and they gain confidence now. Then as an adult, they'll keep that going.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we are coming to the end of the program. So one thing that I do on the program to every guest, if you've watched a program, this is what I do. I put everybody on the spot. I make them super nervous right before the end of the program, and this is the deepest question I'll ask all day, I promise. Just I want to give you the opportunity to speak directly to the hearts and the minds of everybody listening. I say that. You don't have to, it can be whatever you want to say. Just want to start with Miss Moser. Just here's your opportunity to speak to anybody listening. Tell them what you got to say, Miss Moser.
Oh, wow. What do I have to say? I don't know. I'm not used to speaking in this tone. It's usually professional. No, I think just I'm going to say it. 20 some years in education. I've loved every minute of it. I know some people it's a love-hate relationship. I like to work. I like to do my job. I enjoy being around people. I enjoy the students. I love students. If I don't love students, then I shouldn't be doing it. So that's always the big piece. But I think Newton is a strong community, and will continue to be a strong community. Just coming together, like you said, as a village to support the students who will live in that community, and they'll want to stay here and be part of it and be good humans. There's been a long history of not just CTE, but other things in Newton, that we have strong things and good things going for us. I just think the community needs to come in and see that and continue to support us. And every adult has every kid at heart, and what we want them to be is successful, and leave with that. So I just want to shout out to my teachers. They're it. Let me tell you what, they're the bomb. They're the bomb.com. They're awesome. They work their tail off, and beyond the school hours of the day, they work their tail off, and they need to, I wish they could be recognized for that. That's the one thing about being in education is we don't want to be highlighted, but we need to recognize that those teachers are a big piece, and need to support them in what they do, no matter what that is.
Yeah. Mr. Baughman?
Well, I'm not going to be as detailed as that, but
sorry.
She's the detail person. I love it.
I think what comes to my mind is never stop learning. As old as you get, I tell my students this constantly. Do what you like to do, but always learn. Whether it's pursuing more education, or learning a different hobby, or just doing what you like and getting better at it. Never stop learning. It's never too late to learn. I'm always telling my students my story. I didn't go to school right away, but I ended up going, taking night classes and going back to school, and eventually got my bachelor's degree. And so, if I can do it that way, they can do it too, or they can just go to college. But never stop learning.
Never stop learning. All right. Well, I appreciate you both, Miss Moser and Mr. Baughman. I just want to tell everybody thank you for listening to this episode of HCTalk. As always, I was your host, Lance Gormley, and our special guest on the program today was the CTE Director, Miss Moser, and the CTE Machining Instructor, Clayton Baughman. Have a good one, everybody.